Can Texas flip one of A&M's top commits? The door is now open. We've got the latest scoop on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You were locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin local, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Please remember to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment. That's one of the fastest ways to help us grow right here on Locked On, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com. We've got some interesting Arch Manning stats to get into. Also, some love to one of the new starters on this Texas Longhorns roster. But first, a pretty interesting recruiting nugget. One of Texas's misses on the recruiting trail this summer was KJ Edwards, the four-star running back from Carthage High School in Texas, who committed to Texas A&M back in June. And that was a bit of a surprise at the time. It wasn't like the Aggies came out of nowhere. Edwards visited College Station a number of times before he pledged, but the timing of the commitment was unexpected. Edwards had a visit to Austin scheduled a week after he committed, so obviously he canceled that visit. And it kind of felt like the Longhorns were in the driver's seat for the majority of this recruitment until, again, the commitment happened. KJ Edwards was originally supposed to commit on August 2nd, so that mid-June announcement, again, it was unexpected. It caught me by surprise. It caught most of the recruiting experts by surprise. Easy for me to say. Now, since then, the Longhorns have been able to respond. They landed five-star running back Derek Cooper out of the state of Florida. And that was huge because, well, Edwards had committed to A&M. Xavier Crowell had committed to Alabama. Those were the other top running back targets for Texas in this 26 cycle. The Horns missed on them both. They upped the full court press on Derek Cooper, and they were able to land one of the top tailbacks in this 2026 class. Here's where things get interesting. Kind of felt like the story was over at that point, but here's where things get a little interesting. Multiple sources are now reporting that KJ Edwards is planning to take a visit to Austin for a game this season. I've also talked to a couple of people that say that Texas running backs coach Chad Scott still communicates with KJ Edwards, quote, pretty regularly, end quote. I also read this on Inside Texas earlier today. KJ Edwards was recently asked about his relationship with Chad Scott, and he said, quote, Coach Scott is a real one, end quote. We've got more. How about this statement from KJ Edwards' father earlier today? Quote, I told my son we committed, but at the same time, I want him to make the most of this process because once you sign, there's no going back. I said, are you going to Texas for a game? I asked him that yesterday, and he said, yeah, Dad, I still want to go. My whole thing, and I know they got the other running back committed, but we don't really focus on none of that. With him, we need to make some more games. I want to make sure when that time comes, you really feel like you made the best decision considering everything, end quote. So with all of that said, the quotes from KJ Edwards, the quotes from his father, it sure sounds like the door is still open, at least a little bit, for Texas to potentially land KJ Edwards after all. He's open to taking a visit for a game this fall. His dad's talking about, hey, keeping this thing open and make sure you have all of the information before you make your final decision. I mean, the dad's talking about once you sign, there's no going back. And that's true. Anybody can commit, but until the pen hits paper on National Signing Day, nothing is official. So KJ Edwards and his family, it sounds like they're at least keeping their options open right now. There's no decommitment from A&M. Nothing that says that he's not going to end up going to College Station. But the fact that Texas could be getting a visit, also it sounds like KJ Edwards is going to take a trip to Baton Rouge to take in an LSU game this season. So it's not just the Longhorns and the Aggies fighting for this one. LSU isn't going down without a fight either. This one could be one worth paying attention to over the next 3 months and change before we get to National Signing Day on December 3rd. Bringing things back home to Austin, the Longhorns definitely want a second running back in this class. As of right now, they don't have any offers out to any uncommitted tailbacks. Of course, that can change, and I'll provide a name of a potential target that's about to go into his senior year of high school that Texas might offer and try to get at the last minute. But if you can add Derek Cooper and KJ Edwards in the same class and you bring them in with what you already have in this running back room, sheesh. I'll say this. If both of those guys come in, there's a good chance somebody who's already here will transfer. I mean, the Texas running back room is already in a fantastic spot. They already have as much depth as just about any running back group in the country, and the entire room can come back in 2026. Trey Wisner could go pro. CJ Baxter could go pro. They're both draft eligible after this year, but they also both have remaining eligibility following the 2025 season. So those guys can come back. You know, Christian Clark will be going into his third year. Jarrett Gibson will be going into his third year. James Simon and Ricky Stewart, your two freshmen here, will be going into their second years in 2026. And then you add those two freshmen on top of everything else. That's wild. But also, it's not a very bold prediction to say that at least one of those guys is going to portal out. And that's fine. Like, that's not going to stop Texas from going after as many talented running backs as they can. And it shouldn't. KJ Edwards is a stud. Texas wanted this guy for a reason. I mean, he's the third-ranked running back in this class. He's a top 40 player nationally. He was the state championship MVP for Carthage last year. And another kind of under-the-radar positive element to KJ Edwards and what he brings to the table, his team had so many blowout wins last year that he didn't have to play a ton. He sat out in a bunch of second halves, meaning he still has a lot of tread on his tires. And that matters at the running back position because the shelf life for those guys, you see it in the NFL, it's not nearly as long as pretty much any other position on the field. So getting a guy who doesn't have a ton of wear and tear on his body, that's something that you would love to have. KJ Edwards, he's got track speed. He can catch out of the backfield. He is a stud. So you understand why Texas hasn't closed the door on this one yet. You understand why Chad Scott is still communicating regularly with KJ Edwards. The Longhorns are going to stay on him until the buzzer, and they absolutely should. This would be a big-time flip if Texas is able to get it. And I like hearing his dad say that, yeah, we know they've got that other running back committed, but that doesn't matter. We're going to go to the place that is best for us. Maybe that's Texas when it's all said and done. Once again, felt like the Longhorns were in the lead for most of the KJ Edwards recruitment before he decided to commit to A&M back in June. Maybe there's a chance for Texas to get a flip here before we get to December. That'd be awesome. I promised y'all a name of a potential senior eval at running back. That's current Texas Tech commitment Ashton Roden. How about that? You're going after an A&M commit. Maybe you're going to go after a Texas Tech commit in the not too distant future. Ashton Roden is from New Boston High School here in Texas. He's a 3-star running back, the 25th ranked running back in this class, committed to Texas Tech last month. I've been told that Texas is very interested in Ashton Roden. This isn't just a random name that I'm giving y'all. This is somebody that I was told by a source that I really trust that Texas is interested in. And it sounds like the Longhorns are going to have somebody at most, if not all, of Roden's games this coming high school season. They're going to keep a close eye on him. He's 5'11", 200 pounds. Doesn't have a ton of massive offers yet. Arkansas did offer. I believe they're the only SEC team who has to this point. A&M kicked the tires on him for a while, but they have not offered. Michigan State, I believe, is the only Big Ten school that has given Ashton Roden an official offer to this point. He does have a lot of offers from some of the other Texas schools, TCU, Houston, SMU, just to name a few. There's a few other Power 4 conference schools that are in the mix as well. But that's a name to remember. Obviously, Texas is going to prioritize KJ Edwards, and if they feel like they can get, a top 3 tailback in the country, then that's the guy they're going to go after first. But if it feels like KJ Edwards is trending A&M, or maybe he's trending LSU, then the Longhorns are going to start flipping their attention to some of these guys that they have yet to offer. and Ashton Roden is a name to remember. You might hear that he's the 25th ranked running back, and you're like, why should I care too much about that? Well, remember, Quintravion Wisner was the 33rd ranked running back in the class of 2023 coming out of DeSoto High School. We know how good of a player he turned out to be, and we're expecting big things from him moving forward in his Longhorn career. So Ashton Roden, a name to keep an eye on, but oh man, KJ Edwards. Steve Sarkisian's been the king of flips during his Texas tenure. He's netted at least 3 every year that he has been the head coach in Austin. Already have one with Richard Wesley so far. A couple of others potentially in the mix as well for Texas. KJ Edwards would be a double whammy because he's a hell of a player, and you're also taking him away from one of your biggest rivals. Sign me up for that. Sounds like the door is open at least a little bit. All right, we'll take your thoughts. Comment below. Are you interested in KJ Edwards? I think the answer to that is yes, but do you believe that Texas has a chance to land the top-ranked tailback in the state for 2026? All right, that's the future of Texas football. Let's bring things back to the current team. We've spent some time talking about how explosive we think this offense is going to be now that Arch Manning is under center. Now we've got some stats to kind of back that up. We'll get to it up next right here on Locked On Longhorns. But first, a word for our friends at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even say what they're worth. 401ks, properties, investments, credit cards, all of those things. It can be tough to have the full picture. And because of that, well, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why Monarch Money exists. They are your all-in-one personal finance tool that can bring your entire financial picture into focus into one super clean and easy-to-use interface. Whether you're on your phone, whether you're on your computer, it's super easy because Monarch Money does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization for your spending, and finally, you can feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Everything is done for you, so you don't have to spend all of your time checking a bunch of apps, dealing with the spreadsheet, all of that hassle and haggle. It's now a thing of the past thanks to Monarch Money. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. This is maybe the most important thing you can do. Head over to monarchmoney.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get half off your first year, just like that. Again, monarchmoney.com. That's the website. The promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 50% off your first year from our friends at Monarch Money. All right, back here on Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. Let's talk Arch Manning. But before that, let's talk Quinn Ewers. It felt like one of the biggest and most common complaints about Quinn Ewers during his run at Texas was the deep ball and Quinn's lack of deep ball attempts, and the lack of consistency and the lack of accuracy and the lack of success on those deep shots. It just felt like the explosive element of the Texas offense wasn't all the way there last year, and really in any of the 3 years with Quinn as the starter. And you think about all of the wide receiver talent that the Longhorns have had in the last 3 years, from Xavier Worthy to Adonai Mitchell to Matthew Golden to Isaiah Bond and Jordan Whittington. I mean, the list goes on and on. It feels like with the speed and athleticism that those guys possessed, there should have been more super explosive plays in this offense. I felt like you could have had a 40 to 50 plus yard passing touchdown every week. And you think about Steve Sarkisian's offense at Alabama when he was the OC there before coming to Texas, it felt like they had 2 or 3 of those huge pass plays every week. I mean, that 2020 national championship game against Ohio State, they put up 50 plus, and it just felt like giant play after giant play after giant play. That was one of the most appealing things with the Steve Sarkisian hire. Obviously, all of the offense that he brings to the table, but those deep shots was seemingly just a staple in what Sark was doing in Tuscaloosa. It's obviously been there at times, but you'd like to see more of it. So this isn't a segment to dunk on Quinn. This is kind of a segment to get you excited about Arch Manning and how he can make this Texas offense more explosive than Quinn Ewers ever did. And I'll say this, to Quinn's credit, the Longhorn offense actually led the nation in 20-plus yard plays last year. So this group was still pretty explosive. Of course, you had runs in that category. You had some catch and runs too, where the receivers and tight ends did a lot of the work. But that stat does exist. But we're not just talking about those 20-plus yard plays. We're not going to complain about those. Those are huge plays. But I'm thinking like 40-plus, 50-plus. That's what I want to see more of, and that's what I think we are going to see more of in 2025. Texas actually had 10 plays of 50 or more yards last season. Good enough to be tied for 10th in America. Not too bad, right? Here's what's interesting. 5 of those 10 plays came from Arch Manning. 4 passes, and then you had the 67-yard touchdown run against UTSA. So Arch Manning, who only started 2 of the 16 games that the Horns played in last year, was responsible for as many 50-yard plays as Quinn Ewers was, and he started 14. That is wild. And oh, by the way, if Jonte Cook didn't drop that beautiful deep ball from Arch Manning over the middle against Mississippi State, we would be talking about a 6'5" edge for Arch. Like, that was a perfect throw, and that was, I don't know if it was the start of the downfall for Jonte Cook, but maybe one of the final chapters of Jonte Cook's Texas story. So we're not getting into that right there. But that's crazy to me that in 2 starts, Arch Manning had the same amount of 50-plus yard plays as Quinn Ewers did. I'll credit CJ Vogel of On Texas Football for doing the math here. You know, you divvy up the total snap counts as well, because obviously that should be taken into consideration. Texas had a 50-yard play every 180 snaps with Quinn Ewers at quarterback. With Arch Manning, they had a 50-yard play every 46.6 snaps. It's a pretty significant difference, right? 180 to 46.5, more than 3 times as likely for Arch Manning to have one of those plays than it was for Quinn Ewers. Now, also, it's an important thing to bring up the opponents here, right? Manning's 50-yard plays came against UTSA, ULM, and Mississippi State. We're not talking about Georgia or Ohio State or Clemson, some of the other tougher games that the Longhorns had in 2024. But still, to me, it's something. Another stat that I came across, how about percentage of dropbacks that resulted in a pass completed 20 yards downfield? This is not 20-plus yard plays like we talked about earlier. These are passes that were completed 20 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. For Quinn Ewers, 4.17% of his dropbacks resulted in a pass completed of more than 20 yards. For Arch Manning, that number was 7.92%. Almost double the rate right there. And look, if you watched Arch Manning play last year, the eye test probably tells the whole story, right? We all kind of felt that. Arch Manning throws a better deep ball, and it felt like this offense was actually more effective down the field when Arch Manning was out there versus when Quinn Ewers was out there. The eye test kind of backed it up, and that was one of the reasons why a lot of Texas fans wanted to see more of Arch Manning because of his deep ball success. It's not just the eye test. Now you have some numbers to actually back that up. So I think we're going to see a lot more chunk plays this year than we did in either of the last 2. And that will hopefully lead to more points for this Longhorn offense. Like, man, it's crazy. With Quinn Ewers in year 3 and all of the other talent Texas had on offense last year, first-round wide receiver in Matthew Golden. You had an elite tight end in Gunnar Helm. You had a Joe Moore Award finalist offensive line. You had a 1,000-yard rusher behind you in Trey Wisner. You also had Jaden Blue, who was really good too. I mean, the list goes on and on. All that talent, Texas averaged just 33 points per game. That's the fewest in the Steve Sarkisian era and only 29th in the country. Now, 29th isn't bad, but we're talking about a team that was, in the top 5 for the majority of last year. Obviously, the team that's the preseason number 1 this year, you expect more than just inside the top 30 when it comes to scoring offense. Explosive plays got to help you put more points on the board. No S, Sherlock. Hopefully it happens. Now, not having Golden and Bond speed on the outside will hurt, but Ryan Wingo can run. DeAndre Moore can run. Emmett Mosley can run. Parker Livingston can run. All of those guys were track stars in high school. They've got some documented times that are really good in the 100 and 200s. Those guys can fly. So there's plenty of speed at the top of the Texas wide receiver room, despite some of the departures from a year ago. I'm excited, man. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but I think this offense is going to be fun to watch. Chicks dig the long ball. Isn't that what they say? I think you'll see a lot of those in 2025. So again, the eye test has now been proven. The numbers are there. Expect more explosive plays from Texas in 2025. And it's not just chicks who love those. Everybody loves those. Can't wait to see it. Hopefully we see it 17 days from now against Ohio State. Maybe it takes a little bit for that part of this offense to come together, but I think we're going to see a lot of it throughout 2025. What say you? Are you excited about Arch Manning? Do you agree with me? Do you think the chunk plays will be a bigger part of Texas's offense this year? Does that worry you a little bit? Would love to hear from y'all. Comment below with your thoughts. All right, one segment to go on a Wednesday show. ESPN just dropped a list of 10 second-year players who could break out. One Longhorn is on the list. We'll tell you who it is, and I'll also bring up a few more names who could have been on that list as well. We'll do that next right here on Locked On Longhorns. All right, final segment on a Wednesday show. Appreciate y'all tuning in. It is Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. Earlier today, ESPN's Billy Tucker posted an article titled Second-Year Breakout Candidates in College Football for 2025. Now, important to note, this is not a list of the 10 best sophomores in the country. This is a list of breakout candidates in their second years of college football. And the rule that ESPN used here to distinguish that, nobody on this list is allowed to have started more than 2 games in their freshman year. It's the big caveat there. So, yeah, there's no Jeremiah Smith. He's going into his second year, but that guy broke out last year. There's no Ryan Williams on this list. Going into his second year, that guy broke out last year. These are guys who didn't play very much in their first years, who will probably be playing a lot more this year, who ESPN thinks are going to break out. 10 players made the list. One Longhorn is on here. Coming in at number 9, offensive tackle Brandon Baker. Here's the little blurb from the 4-letter network. Quote, expectations are sky high in Austin as Texas ranks number 1 in the AP preseason top 25 for the first time in program history. While the roster is loaded, there is turnover at key spots, and offensive tackle is one of them. Baker was a highly touted 2024 prospect and was in a battle to start the season. Unfortunately for Texas, Andre Kojo recently went down with season-ending injury, which means Baker has more than likely won the starting spot. He has improved his strength this offseason and has worked hard at the technical points of the position. He will be tasked with protecting the most anticipated player in all of college football in Arch Manning, end quote. Of course, you had to get an Arch Manning thought in there, right? We're talking about the right tackle in a list of breakout players, but you got to mention Manning anytime you get the opportunity, right? And, of course, Brandon Baker will be protecting Arch Manning this year, so he is a very important piece to the success of the Longhorn team in 2025. I'm excited about Brandon Baker, former 5-star recruit, one of the top tackles in America in the class of 2024. I think we played the sound on the show last week. If we didn't, I'll bring it up right now. DJ Campbell, who, of course, is the one returning starter Texas has on the offensive line, he had high praise for Brandon Baker during his press conference last week. He actually compared Brandon Baker to Kelvin Banks. When I heard that, I'm like, whoa, awesome. Because everybody remembers what Kelvin Banks did during his Texas career. Another 5-star tackle who turned out to be a superstar. Kelvin Banks obviously played his first year. Brandon Baker appeared in 8 games, but did not start in his first season in Austin. But DJ Campbell said that Brandon Baker is that technical freak that Kelvin Banks was. Like, he pays attention to all of the details, and he makes sure his technique is on point during every single rep. I don't know if that means we're talking about Kelvin Banks 2.0, but I do like a Kelvin Banks comp whenever I can get it. And I do like a player who is focused on the fundamentals and making sure that he is doing everything right on every single snap. By all accounts, Brandon Baker has gotten better with every single practice, pretty much from the moment he stepped foot on campus, but especially this year. Felt like he was going to win that right tackle battle over Andre Kojo anyways. Now, I agree with ESPN. It's Brandon Baker's job. Hopefully he could stay healthy. Hopefully all of those guys could stay healthy. But I'm excited for Brandon Baker, man. I think he's going to be really good. And even though he's a question mark because we just haven't seen a lot from him at the college level, I think he's going to answer that question pretty early on. I do think he will be a really, really good right tackle for Texas. And, I'm excited to see what he does in his first year as the starter. So I'm glad he made the cut. He was the only Longhorn, though, on this list of 10. I try to think of some other Texas players who could have made it. Again, second-year players. So Arch Manning, even though he's a sophomore, he's a redshirt sophomore. He's going into year 3, so he's not allowed to be on this list. Ryan Wingo is a name that I wanted to bring up. Apparently, and I checked the Texas roster right before recording this, he's got 3 starts to his name. He played in every game last year for Texas. I didn't think he started really any, but he is given 3 starts. So he just misses the cut from the ESPN caveat. But I think we all believe Ryan Wingo's about to have a hell of a year. He was a monster in the Horn scrimmage this past weekend. And look, he got his eyes fixed. He's healthy. He's hydrated now after dealing with that dehydration scare in the first week of camp. He's poised and primed for a monster year 2. And I'm hoping, he does in his second year something similar to what like a Ryan Williams or Jeremiah Smith did in their first years. I don't know if Wingo's on that level, but if he can make that type of impact, or hell, if he can make like 80% of that kind of impact on this Texas offense, then he's going to be a stud and very tough to stop. A couple other names that I thought of. Alex January, talked about him a lot yesterday. I think he's going to have a monster year. I think he's going to end up being maybe Texas's best defensive tackle in 2025. He started both halves of the fall scrimmage, and I don't think that's a one-off too. He's been getting a ton of reps with the first-team defense. I think he'll be really good this season. Ty Anthony Smith at linebacker, another guy going into his true sophomore season, appeared in every game last year for the Longhorns, but didn't start. He's been making big-time plays in camp so far, and Steve Sarkisian called him a budding star right before camp got going. I think we mentioned that yesterday as well. And then Kobe Black is another name that I'll mention. Former 5-star cornerback, played sparingly in year 1. I don't think he's going to start for this Longhorn defense, but I do think he will be the first outside corner off the bench behind Manny Muhammad and Jalen Gilbo. Those guys rotate all the time. So, we'll see how much Kobe Black plays against Ohio State. I think he'll be out there some, but I think we'll see a lot of him in weeks 2 through 4. And then as the year progresses and his game gets better, I think Kobe Black's going to be a pretty key figure. Kitty. I just combined pretty and key and got kitty. I'm not calling him a kitty. I think he's going to be a pretty key figure in this Texas secondary this coming season. Number 1 on that list, by the way, Julian Sayin, Ohio State's quarterback. And he's going to win that competition in Columbus, by the way. It's just a matter of when, not if Ryan Day announces that Julian Sayin's the starter for the Texas game. But yeah, former 5-star, former number 1 recruit at quarterback in his class. Texas is going to have to deal with him in game 1, and hopefully his breakout doesn't start until week 2. All right. Shout out to Brandon Baker. Shout out to all of those second-year Longhorns who, again, I think are all going to make impacts for Texas this year. Shout out to you as well. If you made it this far, number 1, thank you very much. Number 2, please remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on notifications, all of those great things. We really do appreciate y'all making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day. For your next listen, be sure to check out Locked On Bets with my man Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers. They are your one-stop shop for all of your sports betting needs. They've got you covered. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you find your podcast. Plenty more Longhorn football conversation coming up tomorrow. More camp updates, more recruiting chatter, and you never know what else we'll get into. There's never a dull moment on the 40 acres, and we're talking all about it right here on Locked On Longhorns. But that'll do it for today. Until next time, horns up, mic's off. We'll see y'all soon. This is Locked On Longhorns.